By the time people started calling me the King of Greenvale, the city had walls wide enough for 6 wagons to ride side by side. On the morning of my coronation, 12,000 soldiers stood beneath green banners, sunlight flashing across their armor. Griffins circled the towers. Dwarven cannon crews fired a salute from the western rampart, and somewhere below the palace balcony, an elven choir was losing a battle against a beastkin marching band. According to the stories, I had built all of it with legendary heroes pulled from another age. That version sounded impressive. It was also wrong. My first summon was a 70-year-old carpenter who insulted my roof before asking my name. My first magical beast was officially classified as livestock and ate half of my coat. My first throne was a kitchen chair with one short leg. And my kingdom did not begin with an army. It began with 37 hungry people, a poisoned well, a wall that leaned whenever the wind changed, and a piece of paper nailed to my door. The paper said the bandits would return in 7 days. When I first read it, I was lying face down in the mud with someone else's blood drying on my collar. I did not know where I was. I did not know whose body I had woken inside. And the woman standing over me was holding a knife. The last thing I remembered from Earth was the sound of tires. Not the dramatic kind of memory people describe after surviving something terrible. There was no slow motion, no peaceful light, just a wet street, a child chasing a red ball between parked cars, and a delivery truck coming around the corner too fast. I had been checking the bracing on a renovation site across the road. 1 second I was shouting. The next, I was running. I reached the kid. I pushed him clear. Then the world became headlights and pain. When I opened my eyes again, rain was dripping through a hole in a wooden ceiling. My cheek was pressed against cold flagstones. One arm was trapped under me, and every breath pulled at something sharp beneath my ribs. I could smell damp ash, old wine, and blood. The room looked like someone had tried to turn a storage cellar into a nobleman's study and failed at both. A cracked desk leaned against the wall. Mold climbed a faded hunting tapestry. One window had been covered with planks, but whoever nailed them in place had left gaps wide enough for the wind to whistle through. I pushed myself onto one elbow. That was when the door opened. A young woman stepped inside with a lantern in one hand and a narrow kitchen knife in the other. She had long chestnut hair tied into a practical braid. Mud darkened the hem of her moss-green dress, and an herb satchel hung across her shoulder. Her face would have looked gentle if she had not been pointing the knife at my throat. She froze when she saw me move. You were dead. My throat felt scraped raw. I've had better mornings. Her green eyes narrowed. That had apparently been the wrong thing to say. She crossed the room in 3 steps and pressed the knife beneath my jaw. Her hand was steady, but there were dark circles under her eyes. Where are the others? I was hoping you knew. Do not play games with me, Rowan. The name struck something behind my eyes. Not a memory exactly. More like a door kicked open in a dark hallway. Images hit me all at once. A cold manor. A severe man wearing a green and gold signet ring. Servants removing furniture after another debt came due. Villagers turning away whenever the young lord rode through Greenvale. A red-bearded bandit laughing while 2 men held Rowan Ashford on his knees. Then pain. An iron pommel cracking against the back of his skull. The memories vanished as quickly as they came. I grabbed the edge of the desk until the room stopped spinning. The woman eased the knife back half an inch. Rowan, you called me that. It is your name. Right now, I'll take your word for it. She stared at me long enough to make the rain seem loud. What is my name? She asked. I searched the fragments inside my head and found nothing. I don't know. The answer hurt her more than I expected. It disappeared quickly beneath suspicion, but I saw it. Lyru Fun, she said. My mother kept this manor alive after your family stopped paying its servants. I treated your fever when you were 12. You accused my brother of stealing a horse when you were 16. He was beaten for it. The horse was later found in your father's north pasture. There was no useful response to that. I'm sorry felt too small, especially when the crime belonged to a dead young man whose body I had somehow inherited. So I asked the only question that might keep both of us alive. Who killed me? Lyrua's grip tightened around the knife. The ash knives came yesterday for the harvest. Your father used to pay them to leave the manor alone. After he died, they expected you to continue. Another broken memory surfaced. Rowan Ashford tearing up a demand written on dirty parchment. Not out of courage. Out of fury that anyone thought they could command him. I refused. You refused loudly. Then you followed them outside with a sword you barely knew how to use. I looked down. My shirt was stiff with blood, but most of it had dried around a shallow cut near my collar. The killing blow had been the strike to the skull. Why am I in here? They threw you through the side door. I dragged you out of the rain after they left. Her expression hardened. Not because you deserved it. I wanted to bury you before the children found you. I could respect that. How long until they come back? 7 days. Hob Vane took half the grain and left a notice for the rest. And if the village can't pay? Lyru lowered the knife, though she did not put it away. Then they take people. Outside, a wagon wheel creaked. I moved toward the window and pulled one plank aside. Greenvale sat in a shallow valley beneath low forested hills. Or what remained of Greenvale did. A muddy road ran between sagging cottages with patched roofs. Smoke rose from only a few chimneys. The wooden palisade surrounding the settlement had collapsed in 3 places, and one entire section leaned outward like it was trying to escape. Families were loading bundles onto 2 carts. An old man carried a sack so light it folded around his shoulder. A little girl hugged a wooden bowl to her chest, as if it were valuable. Near the village square, 5 people in mismatched leather armor stood around a rack containing 3 spears. No one looked angry. Anger required energy. They looked finished. How many people live here? 37 as of this morning. There were more than 300 when I was a child. Food. Perhaps 9 days if everyone stays. Longer if most leave. Clean water. The well turned foul 2 months ago. We boil what we can pull from the stream. Tools. Livestock. Defenses. Lyru gave me a tired, disbelieving look. Did the blow to your head turn you into a steward? Construction foreman. What? I stopped. That job did not exist here. Neither did delivery trucks, traffic lights, or the apartment project I had left unfinished. Nothing, I said. Show me the notice. She led me through the manor. Every room confirmed the same thing. Whatever wealth the Ashford family once possessed had been sold, stolen, or allowed to rot. Rain had warped the floorboards. The kitchen hearth was cracked. The great hall contained 1 long table, 2 benches, and a single wooden chair with a folded scrap of cloth under one short leg. The bandit notice had been nailed to the front door. 7 days. Remaining grain. 6 silver marks. 2 young laborers to serve the ash knives until the following harvest. At the bottom, Hob Vane had pressed a thumb into red wax. As I pulled the paper free, emerald light unfolded across my vision. I stumbled back. Lyru reached for me, then seemed to remember she did not like me. A translucent panel hovered in the air. Fine golden lines formed words I could somehow read. Territory recognized. Greenvale Village. Population, 37. Recognized ruler, Rowan Ashford. Territory condition, failing. Special authority awakened. Kingdom Gacha System. I read the final line twice. Then I looked at the poisoned well, the broken wall, and the 2 carts preparing to leave. Apparently, I had inherited a kingdom. It just happened to be dying. The system waited until I blinked before replacing the first panel with a list of numbers. Population, 37. Security, 4 out of 100. Food stability, 3 out of 100. Prosperity, 1 out of 100. Loyalty, 8 out of 100. Territory tier, failing village. Prosperity points, 100. Available banner, common foundation draw. 1 guaranteed foundational reward. Draw now? A bright gold button appeared beneath the question. I almost pressed it. If a magical system offered to save your dying village 5 minutes after you learned magic existed, pressing the button felt reasonable. Then I remembered every new contractor who had arrived on a job site and ordered materials before checking the plans. Not yet. The panel vanished. Lyru watched me from beside the door. Who are you talking to? Something called the Kingdom Gacha System. That did not answer my question. It didn't answer most of mine either. I stepped into the village square. Conversation died around me. The old Rowan had not been loved. Judging by the way a mother pulled her son behind her skirt, he had not even been tolerated. People gave me the careful space reserved for an unstable animal. Lyru walked at my side, knife now hidden but not forgotten. I need to know what we actually have, I said. You saw the system's numbers. Numbers without causes are decoration. That earned the first hint of interest from her. We started with food. The communal storehouse held 4 sacks of barley, 1 sack of beans, strings of dried onions, a jar of salt, and several pieces of smoked meat that Lyru rejected after one smell. The building had 2 roof leaks and rat holes along the back wall. The manor held almost nothing. A small bag of oats, sour wine, and a wheel of cheese hard enough to repair masonry. 9 days was generous, I said. I was counting the horse. There is 1 horse. There was 1 horse. It left with the north cart. I watched the cart rolling toward the gate. Can we stop them? You can order them to stop. That wasn't what I asked. Lyru studied me again. Maybe, she said, if you give them a reason. Tools came next. Greenvale possessed 6 axes, 4 saws, 11 usable shovels, 2 hammers, 1 hand drill, and enough damaged farming equipment to fill the blacksmith shop that no longer had a blacksmith. Rope was scarce. Nails were worse. The clay pit east of the village was usable, but the kiln had collapsed. The forest offered timber if people could cut it without being taken by wolves or bandits. The wall was not a wall. It was a collection of old logs sharing a general direction. I pressed both hands against one section. The whole line shifted. Don't do that, said a rough voice behind me. Wind might notice. The speaker was a broad older man with short gray hair, a trimmed beard, and a left leg that did not bend properly. He wore a faded blue-gray gambeson beneath a patched cloak. Garrick Stone, Lyru said. He commands the militia. Garrick looked toward the 3 spears in the square. Command is a generous word. How many can fight? I asked. 5 can stand in a line. 12 more can hold something sharp if fear does not shake it loose. Training. I served 19 years in the Royal Infantry. The others have survived 3 raids. That is not the same as training, but it teaches quickly. Could this village stop 40 bandits? No. He did not hesitate. Could it stop 20? Still no. Could it stop 20 if the wall held? Garrick looked at the palisade, then at me. If the wall held, I would suspect divine intervention and ask the god to fight for us. Fair answer. We inspected the cottages, the empty smithy, the broken mill wheel, and the narrow stream south of the fields. I asked names as we went. Mara and Tuvin kept the grain. Elson knew the forest. Della had delivered half the village's children. Brothers Cal and Ren could lift nearly anything if they stopped arguing long enough to pick it up. Widow Sarah owned the geese. The geese owned the eastern road. Lyru answered until I asked about a thin boy watching us from the roof of the shrine. Pip Thistledown, she said. No parents. No fear. Very little sense. I heard that, Pip called. You were meant to. By midday, I had 37 names written on the clean back of Hobbs' ultimatum. Lyru noticed. The old Rowan lived here for 22 years, she said. He could not have named 5 of them. I have 1 day of experience. Low expectations are useful. She did not smile, but she came close. The well stood at the center of the village beneath a small shingled roof. The water 20 feet below looked clear until Lyru lowered a bucket. A greasy violet film spread across the surface. When did this start? After the spring flood. We cleared the mud twice. People still became sick. I examined the stone ring, the slope of the square, and the drainage ditch behind the manor. The well was downhill from the old stable. More importantly, the stable's waste pit had collapsed during the flood. Did anyone inspect the lining? The stones. The seal behind them. If floodwater cracked it, everything uphill has been leaking into your drinking water. Garrick folded his arms. Can it be repaired? If the lower wall hasn't shifted too far. We need to pump it empty, brace the shaft, remove the contaminated fill, and reset the broken section with clay mortar. How long? With the right people? 1 day? Maybe 2. Lyru looked toward the carts nearing the northern gate. Without clean water, no one will stay long enough to see the bandits return. The emerald interface opened again. Settlement mission discovered. Restore Greenvale's well. Reward, 25 prosperity points and 1 common foundation draw. Failure condition. Population falls below 25. I finally understood why the system had not simply given me a sword. It did not care whether I could win a duel. It cared whether Greenvale survived. I walked to the gate before the last cart passed through it. The driver pulled the tired horse to a stop. 6 villagers sat among bundled blankets and empty baskets. None would meet my eyes. I'm not ordering you to stay, I said. But the well is poisoned because the flood broke its lining. We can repair it by tomorrow night. If I am wrong, you lose 1 day. If I am right, Greenvale has clean water again. An older woman in the cart frowned. And the ash knives. I don't know how to stop them yet. That made several people look at me. Perhaps honesty was unusual here. But I know I can't build a defense while everyone is thirsty. Give me one day. Help me fix the first problem. Then decide whether I deserve another. The driver looked at Lyru. She took a slow breath. The explanation makes sense, she said. And I will test the water myself. The cart remained still. It was not loyalty. Not yet. But the system chimed softly. Population departure paused. For the first time since I woke, one of Greenvale's numbers stopped falling. Repairing a well with medieval tools was exactly as pleasant as it sounded. We spent the afternoon building a tripod over the shaft from 3 straight pine trunks. Garrick found 2 old block pulleys in the mill. Cal and Ren argued over which rope was less rotten until Orin did not yet exist to insult both choices. So I chose the thicker one and doubled it. We lowered a narrow platform into the well at sunset. I went down first. Lyru objected. Garrick objected louder. I reminded them that I was the only person who knew what damage I was looking for. Garrick reminded me that if the rope broke, Greenvale would return to having no lord, which he considered an improvement with unfortunate timing. The shaft smelled worse with every foot. Near the waterline, I found the crack. 3 stones had shifted inward, leaving a muddy channel through the clay backing. Purple residue clung to the gap. Runoff from the collapsed waste pit had been seeping into the well for weeks. The repair was simple in theory. Brace the displaced stones, scrape out the contaminated clay, reset the lining, and seal it. In practice, I was standing on wet boards above black water while villagers worked by lantern light to keep their only rope from slipping. We pumped through the night. No magic solved it. Mara and Tuvin carried buckets until their shoulders shook. Della mixed fresh clay with ash and lime. Garrick organized shifts. Lyru checked everyone for dizziness and forced me to sit after I nearly fell asleep standing. Pip ignored repeated orders to stay away and became useful enough that no one sent him home. He could fit through the old drainage channel beside the stable and pack the outer side of the broken seal where no adult could reach. At dawn, we reset the final stone. By midday, clear water seeped into the emptied shaft. Lyru collected the first bucket, boiled part of it, treated another part with crushed silver leaf, and tested both with a strip of pale fungus from her satchel. The fungus remained white. She drank. Everyone watched her. It tastes like a well, she announced. For half a heartbeat, the square stayed silent. Then people laughed. It began with Della, who laughed so hard she had to sit on the well ring. Kel slapped Ren on the back. The older woman from the cart filled her wooden bowl and passed it to the little girl beside her. The system unfolded above the water. Mission complete. Restore Greenvale's well. Security increased by 2. Food stability increased by 1. Loyalty increased by 9. Prosperity points, 125. Common foundation draw available. This time, I pressed the button. Emerald light formed a wheel divided into dozens of symbols. I saw a stone storehouse, a crate of iron tools, a flock of sheep, reinforced gate plans, and 1 shining silver sword. The wheel spun. I tried not to hope for the sword. I failed. The light slowed past the iron tools, past the sheep, past the gate plans. It stopped on a wooden hammer. Rare civilian talent acquired. Master Carpenter Orin Bell. A column of green gold light appeared beside the well. When it faded, an elderly man stood in the mud holding a square, a folded measuring rule, and a leather case of chisels. He was narrow as a fence post, with white hair swept back from a deeply lined face. A heavy carpenter's apron covered his brown coat. Orin looked at me. Then he looked at the manor. Then he looked at the palisade. His expression became personally offended. Which one of you built that roof? No one answered. Good, he said. I would hate to begin my new life with a murder. I stared at the system window. I asked for help defending the village. Orin snapped his measuring rule open. And apparently the gods decided you needed someone intelligent enough to know what a defense is. He walked toward the wall without waiting for an introduction. I followed. For the next 2 hours, Orin moved through Greenvale like an angry physician examining a very large patient. He struck beams with a mallet, tested joints, measured distances, and muttered words Lyru pretended not to hear around Pip. At the northern gap, he stopped. You cannot repair all of this before an attack, he said. I know. Good. Most lords do not. They demand miracles, then punish craftsmen when wood remains wood. Using a piece of charcoal, he drew a rough map on the back of a door someone had removed from its hinges. The village grew beyond its old inner boundary. Half these cottages sit outside a defensible line. Stop treating every rotten section as equally valuable. Pull the usable timber from the east and west runs. Build a shorter inner palisade around the well, storehouse, manor yard, and 12 strongest homes. Garrick leaned over the drawing. That abandons the outer houses. It abandons empty walls, Oren said. People can sleep inside the line until we survive. Houses can be rebuilt. Corpses are stubborn materials. Garrick grunted. From him, that sounded like approval. How long? I asked. Oren measured again, lips moving silently. 10 days with these tools. 8 if the 2 large brothers stop arguing. The bandits return in 6. Then we are fortunate. I waited. How? You have 6 days to discover whether your enemies are punctual. Lyru actually smiled at that. That evening, Greenvale ate together. The meal was still thin barley stew. There was not enough meat, and the bread had more husk than flour. But the water was clean. For the first time in months, no one had to measure whether thirst was worth the sickness that followed. We carried the manor's long table into the square. People brought stools, crates, and overturned buckets. I took the broken kitchen chair because no one else wanted it. The folded cloth under one leg slipped twice, nearly throwing me into Lyrua's bowl. Pip watched with open delight. Fine lord's chair, he said. Royal craftsmanship. Oren examined it from across the table. That chair is an insult to trees. Can you repair it? I can burn it. The laughter came easier this time. I looked around the table and repeated the names I had learned. 37 people. Still frightened. Still hungry. But no carts waited at the gate. The system showed loyalty at 17. Not high. Not safe. But higher than yesterday. Oren dipped hard bread into his stew and studied the dark outline of the wall. 10 days, he said again. Beyond the firelight, wind pushed against the old palisade. The logs groaned but remained standing. For now, Oren woke the village before sunrise by striking a hammer against the well bell. He hit it 3 times, paused, and hit it a 4th because, as he later explained, the first 3 had not sounded sufficiently urgent. People emerged from cottages wearing blankets and suspicion. Oren stood beside the door he had turned into a map. During the night, he had marked the inner wall in charcoal, along with timber piles, workstations, cooking areas, and something he labeled a disgraceful collection of avoidable roof failures. We have 6 days, I told everyone. The wall takes 10, so we are not repairing the village the way it was. We are building the part we can defend. That announcement went badly. The eastern cottages belonged to 3 of the oldest families in Greenvale. Pulling their wall sections meant leaving their homes outside the new line. Even after I promised space inside, people heard what experience had taught them to hear. A lord had decided their property mattered less than his. Mara, the grainkeeper, stepped forward. Which houses stay protected? The 12 strongest, the storehouse, the well, the smithy, and the manor yard. Your manor stays inside. Because it has a stone ground floor, the largest hearth, and enough room for 40 people to shelter. I will sleep wherever the work crews sleep. Murmurs moved through the group. I pointed to Oren's map. No one loses ownership of anything. We salvage only the outer palisade and abandoned structures. If we survive, rebuilding the exposed homes comes before repairing the manor roof. Oren raised one finger. The manor roof is trying to become weather. It can wait its turn. Mara studied me, then nodded once. The system chimed. Policy recognized. Emergency labor allocation. Loyalty unchanged. That was fair. Promises did not deserve points until someone kept them. We divided Greenvale into crews. Oren took the cutters and carpenters. Cal and Ren were assigned to him together, partly because they were strong and partly because separating them only made them shout across the village. Garrick took everyone capable of holding a shield. We did not have enough shields, so half of them trained with barrel lids and sections of old tabletop. Lyru organized food, water, first aid, and anyone too young or injured for heavy labor. She objected when I described that as one crew. That is 4 jobs. Then you need 4 deputies. She opened her mouth, stopped, and looked toward Della, Mara, Tuvin, and an older baker named Helsa. I do, she admitted. Pip appointed himself messenger. No, Lyru said. I'm fastest. You are 11. That helps with being fast. Less person to move. I asked him to show me every path through the village that an adult would miss. His face changed immediately. Pip led me behind the shrine, crawled beneath a hedge, and disappeared into a stone-lined ditch hidden under years of weeds. The channel ran from the higher western slope beneath the old palisade and into the square. Two side branches passed under cottages before emptying near the stream. Flood drains, I said. Smuggler tunnels, Pip corrected. They were far too small for proper tunnels, but large enough for a child, supplies, or a very determined adult. Who else knows about these? Everyone knows there are drains. Only I know which parts don't fall on you. Can you mark the safe sections for Garrick? Pip straightened. For the militia? For Greenvale's first scout. He tried to look serious and failed because his grin took up most of his face. The work settled into a rhythm. Axes rang from the eastern wall. Oren sorted every removed log into 3 piles. Usable, reparable, and firewood pretending to be construction material. People dug post holes along the shorter line. Children carried wooden pegs. Della and Helsa boiled water and stretched the remaining grain into meals. I moved between crews, solving whatever stopped the next job. The old Rowan's body was leaner than mine had been on Earth and far less accustomed to labor. By midday, my palms had opened beneath the blisters. By afternoon, the wound near my collar had started bleeding through the bandage. Lyru found me lifting one end of a gate beam with Cal and Ren. Put it down. We almost have it seated. Put it down before I ask Oren to hit you with the measuring rule. Oren looked over. Gladly. I put it down. Lyru pulled me into the shade beside the storehouse and removed the bandage. Her mouth tightened. You tore it open. I noticed. Did you? I assumed blood soaking through your shirt was a local custom from wherever your mind went. She cleaned the cut with boiled water and a sharp-smelling tincture. You truly remember none of us? She asked. Pieces. None that feel like mine. But you remember building wells. And walls. Roads. Houses taller than the manor. Her hands paused. Were you a lord? I thought about the renovation crews, budgets, inspections, and the folding chair in a side office that always smelled like coffee. No. I worked for people who thought schedules were a form of magic. Lyru tied the fresh bandage. You are not the man I knew. It was not a question. No. Is he dead? The honest answer seemed cruel, but anything else would be worse. I think he died before I woke. She sat beside me without speaking. Whatever Rowan Ashford had done, he had also been a sick boy she once treated. A neighbor. A person who might have become better and never got the chance. I am not asking you to trust me because I wear his face, I said. Judge what I do with it. Lyru looked toward the new wall, where villagers were raising the first straight run of posts Greenvale had seen in years. I am, she said. That evening, the system offered a resource draw for reaching 25 points of combined security and loyalty growth. I opened it in front of Garrick, Lyru, and Oren. We need iron, Garrick said. Nails, Oren corrected. Food, Lyru said. The wheel spun past iron bars, a crate of medicine, and 3 armored goats. It stopped on a sack of golden grain. Rare crop acquired, hardy sun wheat. Oren stared at the sack. Can we hammer it into nails? Lyru pushed her hand through the grain. These seeds are warm. The system identified sun wheat as a fast-rooting crop able to draw weak ambient mana from damaged soil. It still needed water, prepared fields, and weeks of growth. It was not food tonight, but it could become food before winter. We planted a test row beside the stream. The following morning, green shoots stood 3 inches above the soil. For the first time, the fields around Greenvale looked less dead than the people tending them. Then Pip came running from the northern ridge so fast he fell twice on the way down. He carried a strip of black cloth marked with a gray knife. Riders, he gasped. Ash knives. They're coming early. The captured scout was 16 at most. He had been watching Greenvale from the ridge when Pip circled through the drains and came up behind him. Pip had not captured him alone. Elson and 2 hunters handled that part. Pip still told the story as if he had personally defeated an army. Garrick placed the scout on a stool inside the storehouse. The boy's wrists were tied in front of him. He kept looking at the door and swallowing. How many? Garrick asked. The boy said nothing. Lyru set bread and water on the crate beside him. Answer, and you eat, she said. Hob will skin me. Hob is not here, I said. He will be. That fear told us more than bravado would have. I untied one of his hands and pushed the bread closer. How many? He tore into it. 32. Maybe 35. More joined after the South Road. Garrick's jaw tightened. You said 7 days, I told him. Hob heard you were fixing the wall. The scout said around a mouthful. Said if he waited, you'd start thinking it belonged to you. When? Night after tomorrow. Maybe sooner. 6 days had become 4. Weapons. Axes. Bows. 2 horses. And Marek. Garrick leaned forward. Who is Marek? The scout looked genuinely surprised. The fire mage. Outside, Oren's crews were still setting posts. We had 1 completed gate, a third of the inner line, and no protection against fire. Garrick gathered the adults in the square. We evacuate south, he said. Tonight. Take food, water, and what blankets we can carry. Leave nothing useful. No one argued. That frightened me more than panic would have. They had abandoned Greenvale in their minds long before I arrived. Where do we go? I asked. There are villages beyond Thornwatch. Will they feed 37 people? No. Can Della walk that far? Can Garrick? Can the children? Garrick's expression hardened at the mention of his leg. I can walk far enough. That isn't the point. The bandits have horses. If they find us on the road, we lose the wall and the ability to choose where the fight happens. If we stay, people die. Yes. The square went silent. I hated the word as soon as it left my mouth, but lying would not make anyone safer. People may die if we leave too. I continued. I cannot promise this works. I can promise the decision belongs to everyone who has to risk it. I pointed south. Anyone who leaves gets food and water for the journey. No punishment. No lost home. If Greenvale survives, you can return. Then I pointed to Oren's map. Anyone who stays gets a job, a place behind the inner line, and every plan we can build in 4 days. One by one, people looked toward Lyru. She noticed and sighed. I am staying, she said. Running does not make my patience faster. Garrick rubbed his injured leg. If they stay, I stay. Someone has to stop you from arranging them like fence posts. Oren tapped the map. I was summoned into a village with no straight walls. I refused to die before correcting at least one. Pip raised both hands. You were already staying, Lyru said. I wanted my vote counted twice. By sunset, all 37 had chosen to remain. The system awarded no points. Choice was not loyalty until it survived pressure. Oren changed the plan. We abandoned another third of the intended wall and tightened the line around the square. Timber from unfinished sections became angled braces behind the gate. Wagons were overturned to block the eastern street. Roof shingles were soaked in water. Barrels were placed beside every structure. Lyru mixed pine resin, bitterroot powder, and lamp oil in clay pots. What do those do? I asked. Make smoke thick enough to blind a charging man. Will they explode? Only if Pip helps. Pip looked offended. I can explode things carefully. Garrick trained shield pairs from sunrise until people could move without staring at their feet. One person braced. The other struck with a spear over the shoulder. They practiced falling back 3 steps, turning, and closing again. You are not heroes, he told them. Good. Heroes chase. Soldiers hold. We dug shallow pits outside the northern gap and covered them with wicker and dirt. Not deep enough to kill. Deep enough to break a charge. The drainage channels let Pip and 2 smaller runners move between the storehouse and wall without crossing the exposed square. On the last evening, our captured scout asked what would happen to him. You stay tied during the attack, I said. If we win, you choose work or the road. If Hob wins, I expect he decides. The boy looked toward the ridge. He has a mage. You mentioned that. No, you don't understand. Marek burned a watch post with 6 men inside. Hob keeps him drunk because sober, he remembers he could lead the gang himself. The warning horn sounded before midnight. Not from the north. From the western field. Hob had arrived early again. Firelight moved between the trees. Dozens of torches spread across the western slope. Far from the gate, we had spent 4 days reinforcing. Hob had seen our new inner line and chosen the oldest exposed section instead. Garrick did not swear. That worried me. Positions, he said. The village moved. Not perfectly. Someone dropped a spear. 2 children ran toward the wrong shelter. A barrel rolled loose and nearly knocked Cal off his feet. But people knew where to go. Lyru took the non-combatants into the stone ground floor of the manor. Oren sent his crew to the western braces. Garrick formed 12 defenders behind overturned wagons. I climbed the watch platform beside the well. Hobvane rode into the field on a gray horse. He was larger than Rowan's broken memories had shown me, with a thick red beard and shaved temples. Iron studs covered his leather coat. A hooked axe rested across his saddle. Beside him swayed a narrow man in a stained red robe. Marek. Hob raised one hand. Little lord. His voice carried easily through the dark. I heard you crawled out of your grave. Come outside, and I may put you back gently. I descended the platform and walked close enough to be seen over the wagons. You came for grain, I called. We planted it. Then I will take the field too. You'd have to know how to farm. People behind me made nervous sounds that might have been laughter. Hob smiled. I like you better with a cracked skull. Here is my offer. Open the line. Give me the grain, the silver in your manor, and the herb girl. You keep breathing. Lyrua's smoke crews were still moving pots into position behind the western brace. We needed another minute. There is no silver in the manor. Then the girl covers your debt. She would stab you before the first mile. I know. Hob's grin widened. I kept him talking. Your scout is alive. That drew whispers among the bandits. Keep him, Hob said. He got caught. The boy heard from inside the storehouse. I saw his face at the small window. Good. Let him understand exactly what loyalty to Hob purchased. Oren raised a closed fist behind the wagons. Ready. My answer is no, I said. Hob lowered his hand. Arrows came first. Most struck wet roofs or the dirt. 2 hit shields. 1 punched through a shutter and buried itself in the manor door. Then the bandits charged the western gap. The first rank hit our covered pits. Men vanished to the knee, crashed into those behind them, and turned the charge into a knot of bodies. Garrick waited until they struggled upright. Smoke. Lyrua's crews threw clay pots from behind the wagons. They shattered among the bandits. Thick gray smoke rolled across the approach, stinging eyes and hiding our numbers. Forward 3. Our shield pairs advanced. Spears struck through the smoke. Not wild thrusts. 1 target, withdraw, brace. Garrick moved behind the line, correcting shoulders with the flat of his sword. The ash knives expected villagers. For several seconds, they met soldiers. Then Marek lifted both hands. Orange light gathered around his fingers. Down, I shouted. Fire crossed the field in a roaring arc. It hit the western palisade and climbed 10 feet above the logs. Steam burst from soaked wood. 1 brace caught despite the water, then another. The defenders recoiled. Hob drove his horse through the smoke. Break them. The outer brace cracked. I ran toward Oren's crew. Release the frame. Not yet. The line is going. That is not where they are standing. Oren watched through the smoke, measuring chaos as if it were timber. Hob's first 10 fighters forced their way past the burning posts. Now, Oren said. Cal and Ren cut the retaining ropes. A heavy timber frame dropped from behind the palisade. It did not fall outward. Counterweight ropes pulled it sideways across the breach, sweeping 3 bandits off their feet and pinning the others between crossed beams. Oren had built a gate where Hob thought he had destroyed a wall. The village cheered. Marek screamed and gathered fire again. Garrick saw him. Second pair. With me. He took 4 defenders through the drainage cut beside the wagons. Smoke hid them until they emerged along Marek's flank. The mage turned too late. His fire struck the ground, blasting mud into the air. Garrick's first shield man absorbed the edge of it and fell. The second closed the distance. Garrick hooked Marek's ankle with his bad leg braced behind him, pulled the mage down, and struck him unconscious with the pommel of his sword. Without fire, the battle became wood, mud, fear, and discipline. Hob tried to rally his fighters at the breach. I climbed the fallen frame and met him there. He swung the hooked axe from horseback. I caught the shaft with a construction hook, which was not a weapon, and immediately proved it by nearly leaving my hands. The force dragged me forward. Hob leaned down, smiling. Still not a swordsman. Never claimed to be. I kicked loose the pin holding the last counterweight. The rope snapped tight across the horse's path. The animal stumbled. Hob threw himself clear before it fell, rolled, and came up with a knife. I had enough time to understand that my plan had not included what happened next. Lyrua's knife struck the mud between his boots. She stood on the wagon behind me with another smoke pot in her hand. I told him I would stab you, she said. Hob looked from her to the defenders closing around the breach. Then he ran. Several ash knives followed him into the smoke. Others dropped their weapons when they saw Marek down. Garrick ordered the line to hold. "We can catch him," one hunter said. "No," I answered. Hob knew the western forest. We were exhausted, injured, and still guarding families. Chasing him would turn victory into the ambush he wanted. We let him go. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. It felt like a year. When the smoke cleared, 3 villagers were badly injured. One, a quiet farmer named Tuven, did not survive the arrow beneath his ribs. 6 bandits lay dead. 11 surrendered. Marek remained unconscious with his hands tied inside a grain sack because we had run out of rope. There was no clean victory feast. There was blood on the new wall and a body beneath Lyrua's blanket. But Greenvale still stood. The emerald interface appeared above the broken western line. Territory defense successful. Achievement unlocked. The village that refused to disappear. Security increased by 16. Loyalty increased by 22. Village defense draw awarded. Regional notice issued. That last line chilled me. Who received the notice? I asked. The system answered with its usual lack of comfort. All recognized rulers within the marches of Avialone. Somewhere beyond the hills. Every local lord had just learned Greenvale was alive, including the man who had paid Hob to keep it weak. We buried Tuven beneath an ash tree overlooking the fields. His wife, Mara, stood beside the grave with both hands wrapped around their daughter's shoulders. I had known him for 4 days. They had known him their whole lives. No speech I gave could bridge that distance. So I did not pretend. I helped Garrick lower the body. I carried stones for the marker. When Mara asked whether his share of the grain would still feed their daughter, I told her yes, and wrote the rule down before anyone could call it charity. Families of anyone killed defending Greenvale would keep their full food share and home. The village had demanded the risk. The village would carry the cost. The system recognized the policy but awarded no points. Again, fair. 11 captured bandits sat under guard near the smithy. Some were hardened men. Others looked barely older than the scout Pip had found. Garrick wanted them expelled without weapons. Lyru wanted Marek kept for trial because burning watchmen alive was not ordinary raiding. Several villagers wanted all of them hanged. I understood the anger. 6 enemy bodies lay beyond the wall, and Tuven's grave was still fresh. But Hob had discarded his own scout without thought. I did not want Greenvale learning leadership from him. Anyone proven to have murdered prisoners or villagers goes to trial. I said. The others choose. Work under guard to repair what they damaged, or leave without weapons after 3 days of food. They will come back, Mara said. Some might. If they do, Garrick will be ready. Garrick looked unhappy, but not surprised. The young scout chose work first. His name was Jory. 4 others followed him. While repairing the western line, Jory told us where Hob received coin and orders. Once every month, a rider in Baron Malken's burgundy colors met the gang at an abandoned toll house. The ash knives kept Greenvale's population low, discouraged traders, and made certain no one reopened the old silver mine. What silver mine? I asked. Everyone nearby stopped working. Oren looked at Lyru. You failed to mention a mine. It has been cursed for 10 years. That is different from not existing. Before we could argue about curses, I opened the village defense draw. The reward will contain swords, armor, a watchtower blueprint, a war dog kennel, and 1 golden card showing rows of soldiers. It stopped on the card. Military knowledge acquired. Greenvale spear and shield foundation manual. No weapons appeared. Instead, a thick book dropped into my hands. Garrick opened it, scanned 3 pages, then turned several more with growing attention. This is good, he said. Better than swords? A sword makes one untrained fool more dangerous. This can make 50 farmers stand together. The manual contained progressive drills, command signals, formation diagrams, equipment measurements, and supply tables. It did not create an army. It gave Garrick a path to build one. That afternoon, we gathered in the square to decide what Greenvale was becoming. I wrote 4 rules on a new board outside the storehouse. No hidden taxes. No forced labor. Equal protection under Greenvale law. Food before luxury. Those are not enough rules for a village, Lyru said. No, but they are enough to tell people what kind of village we are trying to be. Oren added a 5th beneath them. No unapproved roof construction. I left it there. During the next week, the carts that had paused at Greenvale's gate returned from nearby camps. Then came 2 families who had fled after the well turned foul. Then a blacksmith's apprentice whose master had died in winter. Each person brought another mouth, another pair of hands, and another reason our food problem had not disappeared just because we won a battle. Population reached 53. The wall grew straighter. Garrick's morning drills grew louder. Sunwheat spread in bright green rows across the nearest field. One evening, Lyru found me sitting alone on the unfinished gate platform, looking at lanterns moving between the homes. "They believe you now," she said. "Some do. That was what you wanted." It was easier when they expected nothing. She leaned against the post beside me. Because disappointing them would change nothing? Because if I fail now, they stay long enough to be hurt by it. Lyru was quiet for a moment. Good. I looked at her. A lord who is not frightened by that should not be trusted. Hoofbeats sounded on the northern road. Not bandits this time. 3 riders entered beneath a white legal banner. Their coats were clean, their horses well fed, and the lead rider carried a burgundy case stamped with a silver thorn. Baron Malken's crest. He dismounted without looking at the repaired wall. "Rowan Ashford," he announced. "By authority of Thornwatch and the March Court, I am here to collect 12 years of unpaid protection tax." He opened the case and removed a stack of sealed documents. The total written at the bottom was large enough to buy Greenvale 3 times over. The collector introduced himself as Magistrate Pell and asked to use my audience chamber. I took him to the manor's great hall, where rainwater dripped into a cooking pot beside the long table. Pell looked at the broken chair, the bare walls, and Oren measuring a ceiling beam while standing on a grain crate. "This is the audience chamber? It has an audience." Lyru coughed into her hand. I suspected she was hiding a laugh. Pell laid 12 documents across the table. Each carried an Ashford seal, a Thornwatch counter seal, and columns listing road protection, patrol wages, emergency grain, bridge repairs, and accumulated interest. The numbers were carefully written. They were also impossible. One invoice charged Greenvale for replacing 200 feet of northern bridge rail. I had crossed that bridge in Rowan's memories. It was barely 60 feet long and had never possessed a rail. Another listed 400 dress stones for repairing the well during a year Lyru said it had needed no work. A third charged 3 different villages for the same patrol on the same dates. "Who measures materials in Thornwatch?" I asked. Pell blinked. "The Baron's quartermaster. He delivered 120 wagon loads of gravel to a road that could not hold 20 without becoming a hill. The seal confirms delivery. A seal confirms someone owned wax." Pell's politeness thinned. "The debt has been recognized by the March Court. Payment is due in silver, land rights, or service. Baron Malken has generously offered to accept guardianship of Greenvale in settlement." Guardianship means he owns the mine. The collector's eyes shifted for half a second. There it was. Malken did not care about our barley. He had been suppressing Greenvale because he believed something valuable remained beneath it. Lyru ran one finger down the oldest page. "My father recorded every harvest levy before he died. These figures do not match. Can you prove it?" Pell asked. Her confidence faltered. The village ledger had disappeared when the old steward fled. Without it, our memories competed against sealed court records. "How long before seizure?" I asked. 10 days. The regional code permits 30 days to challenge a territorial debt if security equal to the current year's payment is deposited. Pell stared at me. The rule had surfaced from Rowan Ashford's education. Apparently, he had learned something between avoiding villagers and losing furniture. "That is correct," Pell said carefully. "Security would require 50 silver marks. Greenvale had 3. Then you will have 50 marks in 10 days, and our challenge in 30. Pell gathered the documents. Confidence is an expensive substitute for coin. So is fraud. After he left, Lyru rounded on me. 50 marks. You said there was a silver mine. I also said it was cursed. Most curses are problems with better names. The last 6 miners developed black veins beneath their skin. 2 attacked their families. All 6 died. That was a better name for a serious problem. Pip, who had been listening through the open window, dropped into the room. The ledger might still exist. Lyru grabbed the back of his hood before he landed on the documents. "Why would you know that?" Old priest Ansel hid things when Rowan's father came to collect them. "What things?" "Candles. Medicine. A carved saint with gold eyes. Books." "Where?" Pip smiled. "If I tell you, it stops being hidden." The shrine floor contained a narrow cavity beneath the offering stone. We found 2 candle boxes, dried medicine, a wooden saint with painted eyes, and a leather ledger wrapped in oilcloth. Lyru opened it with trembling hands. Her father's writing filled the pages. Every levy, every grain payment, every Thornwatch patrol, and every year Greenvale received nothing at all. The debt was not merely inflated. It had been paid twice over before Malken began inventing new charges. We had proof. What we did not have was enough silver to make a court look at it. At dawn, Garrick unlocked the rusted gate to the mine road. 10 years, he said. No one goes beyond the second marker. The forest had nearly swallowed the path. Above the trees, the mountain opened like a black mouth. The system displayed a warning. Territory resource site discovered. Greenvale, silver mine. Condition, corrupted. Estimated recovery value, exceptional. Recommended action, do not enter without corruption detection. I looked at our remaining prosperity points. Enough for 1 resource draw. Please be useful, I said, and pressed the button. The reward will stop on an animal silhouette. Resource support acquired, 1 mossback grazer. Classification, livestock. A green flash filled the mine road. Something round dropped into the leaves with a soft thump. It stood about as high as my knee, covered in tawny fur with leaf-shaped ears, tiny curved horns, and enormous dark eyes. Moss grew in a stripe down its back. It looked like a calf designed by someone working from a cheerful description of a goat. The creature waddled toward me and bit the bottom of my coat. This is livestock, Garrick said. The system was very clear about that. Lyru crouched beside it. A mossback. I thought they were stories. Do the stories mention them detecting corruption? The creature released my coat, trotted to a violet-stained rock, and licked it. Its fur stood on end. It sneezed a sparkling cloud into Garrick's face. Pip collapsed laughing. The system supplied a name after Pip called it Bramble 3 times. Bramble could sense poisoned plants, tainted water, and unstable mana. It could also digest small amounts of corrupted material and leave purified residue behind. For the first time, the reward appeared to match what I asked for. I distrusted that immediately. We entered the mine with lanterns, rope, chalk, and enough food for 1 day. Garrick carried a spear and shield. Lyru brought medicine and silverleaf. Pip had been forbidden to come, which meant he appeared from behind a supply cart after we passed the second marker. Sending him back alone was more dangerous than keeping him close. The first tunnel descended through damp, gray stone. Old rails ran beneath collapsed carts. Picks and helmets remained where miners had dropped them a decade earlier. Bramble waddled ahead, sniffing the ground. At the first junction, it stopped and refused the left tunnel. Lyru held a silverleaf strip into the air. Black veins spread across it. That concentration would make us sick within minutes. We marked the passage and went right. Blue-white crystals appeared deeper in the rock. They should have been beautiful. Instead, oily violet light pulsed beneath their surfaces like infected veins. Then one moved. A translucent blob the size of a bucket peeled away from the wall. Crystal fragments floated inside it. Another followed. Then 6 more. Garrick raised his shield. Slimes. Are they dangerous? One launched itself at his face. That answered the question. He knocked it aside. The slime struck the wall and burst, spraying black residue that smoked against the stone. Lyru pulled Pip back. Do not let that touch skin. We retreated behind an or cart while the slimes gathered. They were not hunting us. Each one moved toward the brightest corrupted crystal, attaching itself and slowly drawing the violet color inward. They're feeding, I said. On the corruption? Lyru asked. Or on the mana beneath it. Killing every slime would expose us to the residue and remove whatever had kept the corruption from spreading beyond the mine. So we changed the tunnel. Using abandoned rails and cart panels, Garrick and I built angled channels along the walls. Lyru placed clean crystal chips at their ends. The slimes followed the mana and settled into contained pools where runoff drained into stone pits. It was not a permanent solution. It gave miners a safe central path. Bramble watched the last slime wobble into place, then ate a corrupted chip that had fallen loose. Its cheeks puffed. Should it do that? I asked. Lyru backed away. I have never treated magical livestock. Bramble sneezed again. A clean silver-blue pebble shot from its mouth and struck Pip in the forehead. He picked it up reverently. Can we keep him? Apparently, he already decided. Beyond the slime chamber, the tunnel divided around a collapsed support frame. Pip found a gap above the rubble and wriggled through before anyone could stop him. "Silver!" he shouted from the other side. The wall beyond the collapse glittered with pale veins thick enough to see by lantern light. Old assay marks identified high-grade ore. 50 marks would be easy if we could move it safely. Then a deep scraping sound rolled through the mine. Dust fell from the ceiling. Something large moved beneath the silver gallery. Bramble's ears flattened. The system flashed red. Territory Guardian detected. Condition: severe mana corruption. The rock wall ahead split open. The creature that emerged was not a dragon. That was the first reassuring thought I had. It was only 15 feet long. The reassurance did not last. The wyrm moved on 4 heavy limbs, its body armored in overlapping gray crystal plates. Violet growths covered the left side of its neck and one eye. Each breath released glittering dust that burned holes in old timber. Garrick struck its snout with his shield as it lunged. The impact threw him into the rail wall. "Back!" he shouted. We pulled into the supported tunnel. The wyrm forced its head through, but could not fit its shoulders. It screamed and bit through one of the main braces. The ceiling shifted. Pip pointed to the blackened growth around its eye. "It's like the slimes." Lyru watched the creature claw at its own neck between attacks. "It is in pain," she said. "The crystals are growing into it. Can Bramble clean them?" We all looked at the mossback. Bramble hid behind my leg. "Reasonable." The system offered a Guardian elimination reward worth more points than we had earned since my arrival. Kill the wyrm. Claim the core. Purify the mine. It was the easiest instruction the system had given me. It was also incomplete. The wyrm had guarded the mine before Greenvale existed. The corruption had made it violent. Killing it might clear the tunnel, but it would not explain where the poison came from or what happened when the next creature absorbed it. "We pin it," I said. Garrick pushed himself upright. "With what?" I looked at the old or winch above the gallery. The main chain was rusted but intact. 2 ceiling braces had already cracked. A controlled fall could trap the wyrm's shoulders without collapsing the silver vein. With the mine, we worked while the creature battered the narrow opening. Garrick and I looped the winch chain through the strongest support. Lyru smeared a clean mana crystal with silverleaf paste. Pip tied it to Bramble's harness. "He is bait?" Pip asked. "Only until it follows. Then you pull him into the side cut. Bramble is faster than he looks." Bramble walked into a wall while staring at the crystal on his back. I revised my confidence downward. We widened the opening enough for the wyrm to force through. It saw the clean crystal and charged. Pip ran. Bramble followed because Pip held dried apple. The wyrm hit the marked section. Garrick released the winch brake. The chain snapped tight. One brace tore free, then the second. A slab of fractured stone dropped across the creature's back, driving it down without crushing its chest. The gallery shook. The wyrm thrashed, cracking crystal plates and filling the tunnel with dust. Bramble stopped running. Before Pip could grab him, the little mossback turned and charged. He was not fast. He was determined. Bramble climbed the wyrm's pinned foreleg, bit into the violet growth beneath its neck, and held on. Corrupted light flowed into the moss along his back. His round body swelled until I thought he might burst. Then he sneezed directly into the wyrm's face. Clean silver sparks filled the gallery. The black growth cracked and fell away. Lyru rushed forward, pressing silverleaf paste into the exposed wound. Garrick kept his shield between her and the wyrm's jaws. The creature stopped fighting. Its unclouded eye opened. For a long moment, it stared at Lyru, then at Bramble. I released the counterweight slowly. The stone lifted enough for the wyrm to pull free. Garrick did not lower his spear. Neither did I tell him to. The wyrm backed into the darkness. Before it vanished, one damaged plate dropped from its shoulder and struck the ground with a ringing note. The system changed the mission. Guardian elimination declined. Alternative achievement unlocked. Mercy with a plan. Mind corruption reduced by 41%. Guardian disposition, wary. Resource rights recognized. Pip hugged Bramble until the creature's eyes bulged. "He won." "He sneezed," Garrick said. "Victory takes different forms." We returned to Greenvale carrying 3 sacks of rich or purified crystal pebbles and 1 shed wyrm plate. Oren examined the plate and immediately began discussing armor. The smith apprentice calculated the silver. After refining, the The first load would produce nearly 80 marks. Enough to challenge the debt. Enough to buy iron, grain, livestock, and tools. Enough to make Greenvale visible to everyone who had ignored it. 3 days after the first silver wagon reached the regional market, people began arriving. Not 10, hundreds. The first group was 12 miners and their families. The second was a caravan of laborers fleeing a failed estate north of Thornwatch. Then came 2 smiths, a millwright, 3 hunters, a baker, 7 widows with children, and more people whose skills had never earned them a place behind another lord's walls. Greenvale's population passed 100 before we finished registering names. By the end of the week, it reached 246. Our victory created a new problem every hour. The repaired well could supply the original village, not hundreds. The inner palisade enclosed 12 homes. New arrivals slept beneath carts and lean-tos. Food purchased with silver vanished almost as quickly as it entered the storehouse. Garrick wanted the gate closed. For 3 days, he said, until we count what we have. Outside, families waited beside the road. If we close it now, they camp beyond the wall and become the first target of the next raid. If we let everyone in, hunger gets through without climbing. He was right. So we stopped treating entry as a yes or no decision. Every new household registered its members, skills, tools, food, animals, and medical needs. Those who could work joined construction, farming, mining, sanitation, or defense crews. Children received meals without being counted as labor. No one was rejected for lacking a combat class or a skilled trade. Everyone followed Greenvale's laws. Everyone received the same protection. The system recognized the charter. Population integration policy established. Prosperity growth increased. Oren expanded his door map until it covered 3 doors and part of a wall. He planned 2 communal dormitories, a second well, a water channel from the spring, a mill beside the stream, permanent market stalls, new latrines, and an outer town line that made our recent wall look like a garden fence. How long? I asked. 3 years. I waited. If you say the enemy arrives in 6 days, he continued, I will return to the light that summoned me and complain. For once, no army was 6 days away. The sun-wheat fields spread in gold-green rows. Mana residue purified by the slimes, and bramble restored patches of soil around the mine stream. Lyru moved her clinic from a cottage into the manor's stone wing, where she trained 3 assistants and still found time to tell me I was sleeping too little. Garrick selected 24 recruits for Greenvale's first permanent guard. Serious people now stood in formation with standardized spears made by our new smiths. They were not an army, but they no longer trained with barrel lids. At sunset, I walked through a village that had become a construction site. Hammers echoed between new frames. Soup cooked in shared kettles. Children carried water from the spring channel, while Pip marched beside them wearing a wooden badge that said Scout Captain in letters only he could read. Lyru met me near the square. The court accepted the security deposit, she said. Our appeal hearing is in 12 days. And the ledger? Copied and witnessed. Malken cannot make it disappear without trying very hard. A rider in Burgundy entered through the gate. He carried no court banner this time. The letter he delivered was addressed to me personally. Baron Malken praised Greenvale's recovery, expressed concern for my inexperience, and offered a generous solution. He would erase every claimed debt, recognize our residents, and provide 200 soldiers for protection. In exchange, Greenvale would transfer the mine, surrender independent taxation, and accept him as territorial guardian. At the bottom, he had added one sentence in his own hand. Young men who mistake luck for strength often leave their people to pay for the lesson. I folded the letter. The Kingdom Gacha System opened beside it. Population milestone reached. Rare retainer draw unlocked. For the first time, the reward wheel offered exactly what Greenvale seemed to need. A legendary warrior. I waited until the messenger left before opening the rare retainer draw. Garrick, Lyru, Oren, and Pip stood with me in the manor yard. Bramble stood on my boot because he had discovered that leather tasted better when someone was trying to concentrate. The reward wheel was different this time. No seed, livestock, or tool symbols. Every card showed a person. An elven battle mage. A masked assassin. A dwarven shield captain. A silver-robed healer. A knight surrounded by sunlight. The wheel stopped on the knight. Legendary retainer acquired. Serafina Dawnshield. Golden light struck the muddy yard. A woman stepped from it with her sword already drawn. She wore white and gold plate armor without a mark of rust. A blue half-cape fell from one shoulder, and a sun emblem covered the face of her shield. Long golden hair framed clear blue eyes that moved from threat to threat with practiced speed. She saw Garrick's hand near his sword. She saw Lyru holding a medical satchel. She saw Orin carrying a measuring rule. Then she saw Bramble chewing my coat. "Identify this court," she commanded. "Greenvale," I said. Serafina looked at the sagging manor, scaffolds, crowded tents, and workers carrying a latrine beam across the yard. "This is not a court. That's been useful so far." She lowered her sword by 1 inch. "Who summoned me?" I raised my hand. Her gaze traveled over my work coat, bandaged palms, and muddy boots. "You are the king, village lord." King is a future exaggeration. The system displayed Serafina's information. Class, Solar Knight. Level, sealed by territorial capacity. Current strength, restricted. Loyalty, unassigned. Contract, introduction only. That last line mattered most. "The system brought you here," I said. "It did not make you swear anything." Serafina glanced at the emerald panel, then back at me. "Correct. Good. I need help protecting people, not a prisoner wearing armor." Something in her expression shifted. "And if I refuse?" "We find you a bed, explain the world, and decide what happens next." Pip raised his hand. "She can have the cot that squeaks." "Thank you, Pip." Serafina sheathed her sword. "I will inspect this territory before making any oath." "Garrick can show you the guard." Garrick frowned. Serafina examined his injured leg and frowned more professionally. Their inspection became an argument before they reached the square. Serafina wanted deeper spear ranks. Garrick reminded her we had 24 guards, not a royal legion. Garrick wanted every recruit trained identically. Serafina identified 4 archers, 2 potential cavalry riders, and a mason with enough mana sensitivity to learn defensive magic. Neither was wrong. That made the argument useful. At the end of the drill, Serafina faced me. "They are brave," she said. "They are also dangerously untrained. Can you work with Garrick?" "You summoned a legendary knight and placed her beneath a village sergeant." "I summoned a stranger." Garrick built this line. "Learn what he knows. Teach what you know." Garrick's eyebrows rose. Serafina held my gaze, perhaps waiting for pride to rescue me from good sense. "Acceptable," she said at last. Orin made a note on his door map. 1 legendary knight assigned. Still short 40,000 nails. Serafina spent the following days learning Greenvale. She trained recruits in armor until sweat darkened the padding beneath her polished plates. She helped raise a dormitory beam after Cal challenged her strength. She ate common stew without complaint and looked genuinely startled when Lyru handed her a washing rota. Bramble followed her everywhere. He liked the sun emblem on her shield, or he liked the oil used to polish it. The first time he licked the gold surface, Serafina looked ready to declare war on livestock. By the third, she carried apple slices in a belt pouch. One evening, she examined Malken's letter beside the fire. Her hand stopped over the Silverthorn crest. "Where did this house acquire its emblem?" "Malken's family has ruled Thornwatch for about 80 years, Lyru said. Serafina turned the seal toward the light. Beneath the silver thorn was a tiny 8-pointed sun. This was the mark of a Solian quartermaster corps. My kingdom used it on supply vaults. "Your kingdom?" Her face became still. "Solaris fell 213 years ago. I remember the final morning. Then I remember your light." Malkin's wealth had begun shortly after his grandfather purchased Thornwatch. If his family had found a Solarian vault, the forged debt might be protecting more than a silver mine. Before we could investigate, the March Court summoned us to Thornwatch. Malkin had moved the hearing forward. He expected me to arrive with 1 herbalist and an old ledger. Instead, I brought Lyru, Garrick, and the legendary knight who recognized the secret beneath his crest. Thornwatch possessed everything Greenvale lacked: stone walls, tiled roofs, a paved market, guards in matching armor, granaries large enough to feed our population through winter. It should have felt prosperous. Instead, every shopkeeper lowered their eyes when burgundy-coated soldiers passed. The court occupied a stone hall beneath Malken's keep. Baron Malken waited beside the judge rather than among the petitioners. He was handsome in a polished, deliberate way, with black hair graying at the temples and a burgundy coat over dark scale armor. He greeted me like an uncle disappointed by a nephew's manners. "Rowan, you survived a dreadful misunderstanding with those bandits. I am relieved. So were they. Several now work for me." His smile held. "Your father and I were friends." Fragments of Rowan's memory supplied a different word, creditor. Then he chose friends badly. The judge called the hearing before Malken had to answer. Magistrate Pell presented the sealed debts. I presented Greenvale's ledger and the duplicated invoices. Lyru read entries written by her father, naming harvest amounts, witnesses, and the Thornwatch officials who collected them. Malkin's advocate dismissed the ledger as an unsigned village book. Lyru opened to the witness pages. "These are not signatures," the advocate said. "Most Greenvale farmers could not write," she answered. "They used household marks." She held up the book. An old woman in the public gallery stood. "That is my family's spindle." Then a merchant recognized his father's split wheel. A former Thornwatch soldier identified the garrison mark beside a patrol that never reached Greenvale. One witness became 6. The judge stopped looking at Malken. I demonstrated the impossible measurements. The bridge rail longer than the bridge. The repeated patrols. The gravel that would have buried the road. "At minimum," I said, "the debt requires royal review." Malken rose. "Greenvale has become unstable. Hundreds of unregistered wanderers occupy a failing territory around a newly opened mine. For their safety, I request immediate guardianship until the review concludes." 4 of his knights moved toward us. Serafina stepped between them and Lyru. She did not draw her sword. She rested one hand on the pommel and let a thin line of golden light travel across her armor. Every knight stopped. "Is this how March Court receives witnesses?" she asked. Her voice was quiet enough to make the room quieter. Malkin stared at the sun emblem on her shield. Recognition flickered behind his eyes. "Who are you?" "A citizen evaluating whether your law deserves obedience." The answer surprised me as much as him. Serafina had not sworn to Greenvale, but she had begun calling herself part of it. The judge denied immediate guardianship and sent the debt to royal appeal. Greenvale retained control until inspectors arrived. It was a legal victory. Malkin congratulated me in the corridor. "You have made yourself very visible," he said. "That was your regional notice. Visibility is not protection." His eyes moved to Serafina's shield. "Some relics belong to families capable of understanding them. She is not a relic." For the first time, his smile disappeared. We left Thornwatch before sunset. Behind us, Malkin summoned a burgundy-coated rider to a private door. We did not hear his order. Pip's scouts found the rider's trail 2 days later, heading toward Hob Vane's forest camp. The message reached Hob before we could intercept it. "Burn the fields. Poison the well. Leave no harvest for the royal inspectors to protect." The watchtower bell rang at midnight. By the time I reached the wall, fire arrows were already falling into the sunwheat. Golden rose turned orange beneath the dark sky. Wind carried sparks toward the new dormitories. "Fire crews," Lyru shouted from the square. No one waited for instructions. That was the difference between Greenvale now and Greenvale during the first raid. Helsa's kitchen crews formed bucket lines from the well. Oren opened the irrigation gates, flooding shallow channels we had cut between fields. Wet earth became fire breaks. Garrick moved the guard toward the western tree line, while Serafina took 6 faster fighters north to stop the archers from circling. I saw 3 figures near the well. They wore Greenvale work cloaks over burgundy sleeves. One dropped a glass vial into the water. Pip came out of the drain behind them and blew his scout whistle. The saboteur turned with a knife. Pip vanished back into the channel as Garrick's reserve crossed the square. 2 agents surrendered. The third ran toward the mine road. Bramble blocked him. Not bravely. Bramble was eating spilled grain in the road and refused to move. The agent tripped over him, hit the ground, and lost the remaining poison vials. Lyru tested the well. The violet film appeared again, but only on the surface. "Stop drawing water," she ordered. "Use the spring channel. We can clean this before morning." The first wall repair had saved us from the poison. The second well and spring channel kept the fire crews moving. Hob expected one attack to create 5 disasters. Greenvale had learned to separate them. I joined the field crews. We beat flames with wet blankets and pulled burning plants into the flooded channels. Heat blistered my hands through the cloth. Smoke turned every breath into a cough. Oren directed workers to cut a 20-foot strip through the crop. "We lose that section," he said, "or we lose all of it." No one argued. At the northern edge, golden light flashed between the trees. Serafina drove the archers toward Garrick's waiting line. She could have pursued Hob alone. Instead, she stayed inside the formation, shield protecting the recruit beside her. Garrick saw it. So did I. Hob broke south with 8 fighters. Pip's whistles followed him from drain to drain. 1 sharp note meant road. 2 meant field. 3 meant hidden movement. We did not chase blindly this time. We closed the routes. Hob reached an old culvert beneath the mine road. He kicked aside the cover and disappeared underground. Bramble stopped at the entrance and growled. I had never heard him growl before. Lyru examined the wet stones. Poison. Hob had coated the tunnel walls, expecting pursuers to crawl through it. Pip pointed toward a smaller drainage branch. It joins ahead. He and 2 scouts circled through the safe channel. Garrick blocked the far exit. I waited at the road with Serafina. Hob emerged coughing, covered in his own poisoned dust. He swung his hooked axe once. Serafina caught it on her shield and drove him to his knees. "Kill me," he spat. "No," I said. "Afraid." "You are carrying Malken's orders." His expression gave the answer before we searched him. Inside his coat was a folded command bearing Malken's private seal, along with payment notes for both attacks on Greenvale. The fields burned until dawn. We lost nearly a quarter of the sun wheat, 2 storage sheds, and 1 unfinished dormitory. 7 people suffered burns. No one died. As the sky brightened, Serafina and Garrick stood together beside the captured archers. "Your withdrawal signals are effective," she told him. "Your shield discipline is tolerable," he answered. From them, it was friendship. Hob sat chained near the well he had tried to poison. Royal inspectors were still 6 days away. Malkin's army was less than 2. Malkin did not wait for his sabotage to succeed. Scouts reported nearly 500 soldiers marching south from Thornwatch. Professional guards, hired cavalry, conscripted farmers, and an earth mage capable of breaking stone walls. Greenvale had 62 trained guards, 40 militia reserves, 1 restricted legendary knight, and several hundred civilians. The numbers were terrible. I gathered everyone in the square. The population had reached 489. They filled the road, market frames, scaffold platforms, and manor steps. Some had lived in Greenvale their whole lives. Others had arrived less than a week earlier. "Malkin is coming for me, the mine, and anyone who helped resist him," I said. "You have the same choice Greenvale had before Hob's first attack. Anyone who leaves receives food and safe directions east. Your name stays registered. Your home and wages remain yours if we survive." No one moved. "Think before you decide. 500 soldiers are not bandits." Jory, the former scout from the Ash Knives, stepped forward first. "If I leave, Malkin hangs me for changing sides." "That is not a noble reason to stay," Garrick said. "Didn't say it was my only one." Mara stood with her daughter. The Smiths stood beside miners. Elven refugees from the northern estate joined human farmers. A beastkin hunter raised the spear Greenvale had issued him that morning. They stayed. Not because the system compelled them. Not because I promised victory. They stayed because Greenvale had given each of them a place before knowing whether they were useful. The system filled my vision with emerald light. Collective territory choice recognized. Loyalty threshold reached. Settlement identity available. A blank banner appeared. Oren placed one hand on the silver wyrm plate. Lyru carried a bundle of sun wheat. Pip suggested putting Bramble's face in the center. We compromised. Green cloth. A gold wheat leaf above a silver foundation stone. The wheat represented life we grew. The stone represented what we built together. Helsa and 3 seamstresses worked through the night. By morning, Greenvale's first banner flew above the repaired gate. Serafina came to me beneath it wearing full armor. She knelt. "I have inspected this territory," she said. "Its walls are unfinished. Its army is small. Its lord is frequently reckless and owns an offensive chair. Oren agrees about the chair. I was not finished." She looked toward the people sharpening tools, filling water barrels, and carrying supplies to the wall. Greenvale asks loyalty without owning it. It protects weakness without worshipping it. If you will accept an oath freely given, my shield is yours until I judge you unworthy of it. That last part should be in every oath. Serafina smiled for the first time. The system recognized her chosen loyalty and released another portion of her sealed strength. Then it offered me a military milestone reward. 3 options appeared: heavy cavalry equipment, an enchanted siege bolt, field kitchen, medical wagon, and standardized supply plans. Every instinct wanted the siege weapon. Garrick looked at the marching dust on the northern horizon. How long can the guard fight without food? I asked. Poorly after 6 hours. Very poorly after 12. And wounded people without transport. Lyru answered. They become dead people in inconvenient places. I chose the supply plans. Garrick nodded. Now, he said, we may survive long enough to regret not choosing the bolt. Our workers converted 2 mine wagons into shielded medical carts. Helsa established field kitchens behind the square. Every defense post received water, bandages, spare spearheads, and retreat directions. At sunset, Malken's army appeared across the northern ridge. 500 soldiers halted beneath burgundy banners. Greenvale's unfinished walls cast long shadows over fields still black from Hobbs' fire. Above the gate, our new banner snapped in the wind. This time, no one asked whether the village belonged to us. The question was whether we could keep it. Malken began the siege with a speech. He rode beneath a white flag to the edge of Bow Range, polished armor bright against the blackened fields. Behind him, burgundy ranks covered the northern road. The Earth Mage stood beside a wagon loaded with carved stone rods. People of Greenvale, Malken called. You have been deceived by a frightened boy and foreign mercenaries. Lay down your weapons. Return stolen property. Surrender the mine, the criminal Hob Vane, and the woman carrying the false Solian crest. All others will receive mercy. Serafina stood beside me above the gate. False crest? I asked. His grandfather likely stole from a Solian vault. Calling me false is simpler than explaining why he recognizes my shield. Below us, Hob laughed from inside a barred supply wagon. His mercy comes with a rope. Malken looked up at me. Rowan, kneel now, and your people need not pay for your pride. Months ago, perhaps Rowan Ashford would have answered pride with pride. I looked across the wall instead. Garrick waited behind the gate with the First Shield Company. Pip's scouts occupied the drainage entrances. Lyrua's medical wagons stood beneath green canvas in the square. Oren had marked every wall brace with colored rope, so repair crews knew which failure came first. Helsa's field kitchens were already serving the morning meal. No one waited for me to become a hero. They waited for a decision. Greenvale recognizes the royal appeal. I called. It does not recognize your private army as a court. Malken lowered the white flag. The first stone struck 10 minutes later. His Earth Mage drove a carved rod into the road. The ground rippled toward our northern wall. Posts shifted. One watchtower leaned hard enough to throw 2 archers from the platform. Oren's colored ropes snapped red along the brace line. Crew 3, he shouted. Workers rolled a mine cart loaded with timber wedges into place. Counterweight cables pulled the tower upright while Cal and Rin hammered braces beneath it. Malken's infantry advanced behind broad shields. Our archers did not waste arrows on the front rank. Serafina had trained them to fire high into the unshielded files behind. Garrick held the gate line until the attackers reached the shallow ditches, then ordered one measured volley. The first assault broke against wood, mud, and discipline. The second came from the east. Malken's cavalry circled beyond the original palisade, expecting open ground. They found new irrigation cuts filled with water from the fire defense. Horses slowed. Greenvale hunters fired from half-built dormitory frames, then withdrew through marked alleys before the cavalry could reach them. Pip's whistle sounded twice from beneath the square. East movement. Then 3 times. Hidden force. I followed him into the drainage cut with 4 reserves. Through a gap beneath the outer road, we saw 30 soldiers crawling toward an unguarded section behind the storehouse. They were using the same forgotten channels that had helped us defend the village. The difference was that Pip knew which sections collapsed. He pulled a marked cord. A timber shutter dropped behind the infiltrators. Water from the spring channel flooded the lower cut. Not enough to drown anyone. Enough to pin armored men in waist-deep mud until our reserves surrounded the exit. Surrender, I told them. Their captain raised his sword. Jory stepped beside me, wearing Greenvale green over the gray knife tattoo on his wrist. He means it, Jory said. I tried the other choice. Half the soldiers lowered their weapons. By noon, Malken had lost nearly 80 men to wounds, capture, or retreat. Greenvale had lost 12 defenders from the wall, but Lyrua's wagons moved the injured before panic could form around them. The field kitchens delivered broth, bread, and water to every position. The supply plans were not dramatic. They kept our line alive. Malken understood that time favored us. Royal inspectors were approaching, and every hour gave his conscripts another chance to hear why they were fighting. He committed the Earth Mage. All 12 stone rods entered the road. The mage raised both hands. The northern ground split. Our ditches collapsed. The gate posts twisted. A wave of stone and soil struck the palisade and tore a 40-foot breach through the center. Malken's elite infantry charged before the dust settled. Seraphina jumped from the wall. Golden light covered her shield as she hit the breach. The first attacker flew backward into his own rank. She held the opening alone for 3 heartbeats. Then Garrick's shield line closed around her. "You were told not to outrun the formation," he said. "I arrived first. That is what outrun means." They fought side by side. I joined Oren at the damaged gate. The remaining tower leaned inward. If it fell uncontrolled, it would crush our own defenders. "We cannot hold this," Oren said. He did not sound afraid. He sounded like a carpenter acknowledging rotten wood. The old inner village ended at the square. Its streets were narrower than the new camps, bounded by stone foundations, supply wagons, and unfinished market frames. Streets we had measured. "We don't hold it," I said. We moved to the second line. Garrick heard the horn signal and ordered a controlled retreat. Malken saw Greenvale abandoning the breach. He mistook movement for collapse. "Forward," he shouted from the ridge. "Finish them." His burgundy banners poured through the broken wall. We gave them the village square. Malken's elite troops entered Greenvale expecting frightened civilians. They found empty streets. The population had moved into the stone buildings and southern shelters before the siege began. Food, water, bandages, and ammunition traveled through Pip's drains. Every lane into the square had been narrowed with wagons, stacked timber, and market frames. Our retreat drew Malken's strongest soldiers away from their Earth Mage and cavalry. When the first Burgundy rank reached the well, Garrick sounded the second horn. Greenvale closed around them. Archers rose behind roof parapets. Shield teams blocked the western lane. Miners rolled or carts across the eastern exit and locked their wheels. Oren's crews dropped timber barriers from the dormitory scaffolds. The square became a fort inside the broken fort. Malken's champion forced his way through the northern line. He wore black plate reinforced with glowing stone and carried a two-handed hammer. Each strike shattered shields and drove defenders backward. Seraphina met him beside the well. Their first collision cracked the stone ring. The champion's armor absorbed her sunlight. Solarian runes flashed beneath the black plates. "Vault steel," Seraphina said. "Spoils of a dead kingdom," he answered. "Stolen from people who died defending it." She changed her grip. Instead of striking the armor, she struck the ground beneath his feet. Golden light traveled through the old well stones and disrupted the stolen runes from below. Garrick's line pinned the champion's escorts. Seraphina broke the hammer, then the chest seal, and drove him to his knees. She did not kill him. "Your armor is evidence," she said. Across the square, Malken's conscripts were still fighting because they believed surrender meant execution. That was where Hobbs' orders mattered. We had copied the letters onto signal sheets and borrowed 3 projection crystals from the mine merchants. Lyru climbed the manor platform with Magistrate Pell's original debt notice, the village ledger, and Malken's sealed commands. Emerald gold light enlarged the words above the square. Payments to the ash knives. Orders to burn crops. Orders to poison the well. Instructions to blame refugee residents for the destruction. Jory read the payment marks aloud. Former Thornwatch soldiers recognized the private seal. Malken pushed through his own men toward Lyru. Forgery. No one listened. He drew a narrow sword and climbed the platform steps. I moved between them. Malken was faster than Hobb and far better trained than me. His first cut sliced my sleeve. The second opened my side beneath the ribs. Lyru threw a ledger weight into his face. "That is twice people have saved you with thrown objects," she said. "I'm developing a strategy around it." Malken lunged again. I retreated toward the manor repair frame. The cable running through it was the same kind we had used to brace the well, pinned the wyrm, and raised the watchtower. One end held a suspended stone pallet. The other passed through a locking hook beside my hand. Malken saw an injured, unarmed lord backing into construction equipment. He charged. I released the hook. The pallet dropped. The cable snapped across the steps, caught Malken behind both knees, and pulled him off his feet. His sword skidded into the square. I locked the line before the counterweight could drag him farther. Malken stared up at me, breathless with disbelief. You fight like a laborer. Construction foreman. Around us, burgundy weapons struck the ground. One soldier surrendered, then 10. Then entire conscript companies stepped away from Malken's officers. Our treatment of Hobbs' scout, captured bandits, infiltrators, and wounded enemies had traveled through both armies. Greenvale's promise of trial was more believable than Malken's promise of mercy. The Earth Mage fled toward the northern ridge. Pip's scouts found his wagon mired in the irrigation ditch. Garrick accepted the surrender of the remaining officers. Serafina stood over Malken. "Give the order," she said. Malken looked from her sword to me. He expected execution. Perhaps everyone did. "Arrest him," I said. "Attempted murder, conspiracy, false taxation, sabotage, and unlawful invasion. Add theft of Solarian property after Serafina inventories the armor." Malken laughed once, bitterly. "You think law protects you now?" "No. I think witnesses make it harder to bury." Trumpets sounded beyond the broken wall, not Greenvale's horns. Royal blue banners appeared on the northern road. The inspectors had arrived to find Malken tied beneath the evidence he tried to destroy. Behind them came families from neighboring villages, merchants from the Silver Road, and more people who had watched Greenvale survive. The system opened across my vision. Siege resolved. Territory defended against superior force. Collective contribution recognized. Population threshold pending registration. Settlement evolution available. I did not press the button. Not yet. There were wounded people in the square, fires along the wall, and an army that needed feeding before it could safely disband. A system reward could wait its turn. The royal review lasted 3 days. Malken's records were worse than ours had proven. Thornwatch had charged protection taxes to 7 villages while secretly funding the raids that made protection necessary. His family had stripped a Solian supply vault beneath the keep and hidden its relics inside private armories. The March Court canceled Greenvale's debt. Malken lost Thornwatch, his title, and enough stolen property to repay every affected settlement. Hobb and the captured officers were transferred for public trial. Conscripted soldiers who had surrendered returned home or registered for work in Greenvale. Serafina recovered the first list of artifacts taken from Solaris. She did not smile when she read it, but she was no longer alone with the memory. Greenvale's population passed 900 before the inspectors left. Neighboring villages requested patrol agreements. Miners brought families. Traders established permanent stalls. Some of Malken's former guards asked to join Garrick, who made every one of them begin with the same shield drill as the farmers. We buried 8 Greenvale defenders after the siege. Their names joined Tuvin's on a stone beside the ash tree. Their families kept homes, shares, and places at every public table. The victory did not erase them. The town would carry what it had asked them to risk. On the 4th morning, I gathered everyone in the square. The northern wall was still a gap, filled with wagons. The watchtower leaned. Half the market stalls had become barricades. Smoke stains covered the manor. It was the least impressive moment imaginable for a settlement upgrade. I opened the system. Territory evolution requirements satisfied. Population, 982. Security, 49. Food stability, 38. Prosperity, 42. Loyalty, 67. Village identity established. Evolve Greenvale Village into Greenvale Fortified Town? I pressed yes. Emerald light traveled outward from the well. It did not summon finished walls or a castle. Instead, new boundaries appeared across our planning maps. The system recognized permanent market rights, a professional guard charter, expanded territory authority, and access to town-level banners. Orin received structural blueprints for stone foundations and a proper water network. Garrick unlocked officer training paths. Lyrua's clinic became a recognized public institution. Nothing built itself. For Greenvale, that felt right. The crowd remained silent until the system displayed the new name. Greenvale Fortified Town. Then the square erupted. Helsa had saved enough flour for a victory feast. Long tables filled the road from the manor to the well. We ate fresh bread, roast vegetables, silver-streamed trout, and the first sun-wheat cakes glazed with honey. Bramble stole 3. Serafina caught him on the 4th and carried him away beneath one arm while he continued chewing. Garrick sat with the guard rather than at the head table. Oren spent half the meal explaining that the damaged wall had failed precisely where he predicted, and the other half accepting compliments, as if he had personally invented timber. Pip wore a new green hood and a real silver scout badge. Lyru found me standing near the manor door. "You are missing your own feast," she said. "I'm observing it. From a doorway. Like a suspicious cat." She carried something behind her back. "Sit down, Rowan." She revealed the old kitchen chair. Oren had repaired every joint. The legs stood even. Someone had carved a small wheat leaf above a foundation stone into the backrest. I thought he wanted to burn it. He complained through the entire repair. That means he enjoyed it. Oren called from 3 tables away. Lyru placed the chair at the end of the communal table. "Your throne, my lord. It's still a kitchen chair. Then try not to let the title change you." I sat. From that chair, I could see lanterns hanging from straight beams. Full bowls passed between people who had arrived as strangers. Children chased Bramble around the well. Beyond the damaged gate, green and gold banners moved above tents belonging to families who planned to stay. When I woke in Greenvale, 37 people had been preparing to leave. Now nearly 1,000 were arguing about where to build the next street. I had not inherited a kingdom. I had found people willing to build one with me. The system opened one final panel above the feast. Next territory objective: establish a regional trade route. Primary obstruction: goblin-controlled North Road. Migration alert: 3,700 displaced people moving toward Greenvale. Town-level banner available. Draw now? I looked at the warm bread in front of me, Lyru beside me, Garrick laughing despite himself, Serena trying to remove honey from her shield, and Pip asleep with his new badge still pinned to his hood. Tomorrow, I told the system. For one night, Greenvale did not need another miracle. It only needed time to enjoy what we had built.